Hello and welcome to the Presero training series. In this lesson, we will be learning how to add users and set their settings within the site. We will begin by logging into the Presero account with the information that has been assigned to you. Anyone who has access to a site, whether it is an informational site, a B2B site, or B2C site, is considered a site user. To access the site users, we'll go over to admin, under sites, open the site that you are working with, and down to user management, we will see site users. Under username is the username that was created for the user record. If no username was set up, it will be the email address entered, otherwise it will be the username. Filling in the username field is not required by the system. Under first name and last name, you will see the first and last name of the particular user. Same with the email. You will want to enter the user's email address. This is the date the user record was created. If there is no date indicated, it means the record was created before Presero added this functionality. This is the last date the user logged into the site. If a user visits your informational or retail site without logging in, the date is not captured. They must be logged in to trigger this date field. If there is no date indicated, it means they have not logged in since Presero added this functionality. Then for last order, this is the date the user last ordered through the site. If there is no date indicated, it does not necessarily mean they have never ordered. It means they have not ordered since Presero added this functionality. There are multiple ways for adding a new user. First, you can manually add through the administrative area. You will want to click on the Add New button, and here it will bring up a list of fields. Under personal information, we have first, middle, and last name, wherein the first and last name are required fields. Title, website are optional. Email is a required field. Each user record must have a unique email address. You cannot have more than one user using the same email address, or you will not be able to save the record. If you get an error message that the record cannot be created, make sure that you have not previously used that email address and that it is not an email address for an inactive user account. The @ character is required in email. Telephone, cell phone, and fax are optional. Make sure to select the correct time zone for this user so their view for order and email dates and time is correct. The create date is an informational field only. After the record is created, the day and time will be noted. If that field is blank on a user account that already exists, it means that the record was created before we started collecting this information. With last login, this is also an informational field. Each time this user logs into the site, the date and time will be recorded here. And with last order, Whenever the user places an order in this store, the date and time will be updated here. This field is not used for informational sites. Under custom profile information, we will see the custom profile fields if we have activated the custom profile fields on our site. For the login details section, the username is optional, but if your users would prefer to log in to the storefront using a username instead of the email address, enter one here. The @ character cannot be used in a username. Each username must be unique. You cannot have more than one user with the same username, or you will not be able to save the record. If you receive an error message that the record cannot be created, make sure that you have not previously used that username and that it is not a username for an inactive user account. The password is obviously required. After entering the password, you must confirm it to make sure you entered it correctly. You will not see this entry when you return to the user account after saving for security reasons. Alliant cannot tell you what was entered in these fields either. If a user forgot the password, a new password will need to be entered here and the account will need to be resaved. For a B2C site, we will see is guest user option. If this box is checked, it means that the particular retail site user ordered as a guest and did not create a login. The second time the user orders from you, they will be converted to a normal user and this box will be unchecked. For the integrations section, enter the integration ID. If this user is using an integration with an MIS system, use this input to tie the user account back to the MIS system. For additional information section, it is not seen in an informational site except for text ID field or a B2C retail site except for text ID field and text exempt setting. Under users orders approved by, if orders by the user must be approved, select the group that will approve the order. Leaving this blank indicates that the user's orders do not need to be approved and their orders will be marked approved in the site and in the admin orders area. The users approved by group setting can be left blank or a group can be selected. If you select a group, it will only be used by an approval plan that has the site group assigned to approve the user's orders. For users orders under this approval plan, this means that if a user requires approval, all their orders will require approval and based on who is in the approval group, that is the person that will have to approve the order. The advanced approval workflow allows you to set up any number of approval workflows, maybe based on a product or an attribute of a product or a dollar amount, etc. If you have multiple approval workflows set up, you may select the approval plan that this user must go through for orders that require an approval process. Each user can only have one approval process that their account will follow. When setting up a custom approval plan, each user account does not need to have that custom approval selected for it to apply to their orders. Instead, make the plan the default approval plan for the site from the site settings, and users do not have to be individually set. If you have some users who should use a different plan than others, then you can set them individually. But this situation should be very rare. For purchase order requirement, you may choose to require a purchase order entry on the checkout page. Make it optional or not even ask. Please note, this setting can override the setting on the site settings page if Use Site Settings is not selected. For example, if the user account is set to optional and the site settings page has the PO requirement as required and the Use Site Settings box is checked, then regardless of the settings here in the site user account, the PO will be required at checkout. Under Default PO number, default purchase order number to be added in the checkout screen. If you have defined any purchase order numbers in the purchase order codes admin page, they will appear here. You may also enter a purchase order code directly into this field. If the purchase order requirement is set to "Do not ask," but a default PO number is provided here, the default PO number will be assigned to the order without any entry by the user or buyer. With location, if the B2B site is set up with locations, then the drop-down list will display all the locations available. Assign this user to the location they belong to. This will either be set by default in the store if the site is set to not collect a shipping or billing address, or it will be the default address in the store but allow another choice if the site is set to ask the user to choose a location. Under Boss, select the boss for this user. The drop-down list will contain all the site users set up in this particular store. The boss can be used in some advanced approval workflows. Under Department, select the user's department if the site is using locations and departments. For user account is approved, this must be selected to allow the user to log into the site. For B2B sites that have user self-sign up and they require approval by an approval manager, this box will remain unchecked until the user account has been approved. With user account is shared, if you want this user account to be shared with multiple users, check this box. Please note, the people do not have a user account of their own. Sometimes this is used so every employee at a given customer location can place an order for that location. In this case, the shared account is restricted. Those who log in using the account will not be able to edit the account name, username, password, address, etc. This prevents them from accidentally hijacking the account. provided you allow site users to have access to the address book. Those with a shared account will be able to see addresses, but they will not be able to add or edit addresses. They will not see order history or profile information and will not be able to reorder from a previous order placed. If you have enabled Save for Later on your site, shared users will not be able to use that feature. More than one user can be logged on to a shared account at the same time. They will not be able to see or edit each other's items. Also consider the payment method you are using. If you want to require that shared account users pay with credit card, you will need to consider which payment providers you use to collect the credit card information. For payment methods that process the credit card in the store that do not go to another site, such as PayPal, to have the credit card processed, the customer will not be able to enter a billing address during checkout, so it must exist already in the list of locations added to the site. With user can view pricing, if this box is not checked, your user will not be able to see pricing. They will still be able to order, but there will be no price displayed. This is during the ordering process and in the order history for their account. For tax ID, available in B2B and B2C sites only and not in an informational site. This is the default tax ID for the site. If this is entered, the users will not be required to enter a tax ID while ordering. And with tax exempt, click this box if the user is tax exempt. In the notifications section, with receive notifications checkbox, the Presero system will generate email notifications from the system when certain events happen. This could be when an order is placed, when a file has been uploaded to a form on a page, when a proof is approved, etc. If you want this particular user to receive these notifications, then check this box. With receive all notifications, it is not available in an informational or a B2C site. If this box is checked, this user will receive all notifications generated from this site. It is generally not suggested that this box be checked, but if you have a B2B manager who wants to keep an eye on all orders being placed for their company but do not want to bother with an approval workflow, this can be a good solution. Another way to add a user is to allow the user to create their own accounts via the website. In a B2B or informational site, you can activate the option to allow self sign up. When allowed, the login page for the site will include a link to create an account. In a B2C site, the user by default will be able to create their own accounts. It is important that you must set up new user defaults so that the correct settings are given to this customer when they sign up. So here you will see on the site a create an account button. Once that is selected, a form like this will appear for the users to fill out their basic information. The prompts in the form should be self-explanatory, except depending on your site settings, there could be some differences seen on this form. While both the informational and B2B sites allow self-sign-up, only in a B2B environment, you can also set an option to have the account be approved by someone. This person will be the approval manager, and they will receive an email from the system letting them know a user has requested permission to sign up. If approved, the user will receive an email to let them know they can now log in to the site and order. Another way to add a user is to give a user permission to add new users via their website login. This works well for managers who want to add new employees to their storefront. Here is an example of the page a site user can add and edit other users in their same site. In order for a site user to see the options for editing their own profile, changing their password, manage their own addresses, and manage other users in the site, they must have a link to this area. In the site navigation area of admin, you can drag and drop the profile link to any of your 4 navigation menus. Here, the profile link is added in menu 1. On the profile page, the site user can add new users, set users inactive, and edit the user account right from their own B2B portal. This option is most always reserved for a manager of the company. When the user chooses to add or edit another user, they will get this screen. Notice that depending on the options set in the site settings, this person can set more than just the user's personal information. Depending on the site settings, they can also set location, department, the boss, group to approve orders for this user, where they can get email notifications for themselves, or whether they can get all email notifications sent out for this site. If they are tax exempt, what group they are in. Please note that in order for a user to have permission to add new users or edit in their own site, the user must be given permission to do so. The last way that you can add a user is to upload a database list you fill in. You will find a user import and export option for adding or exporting users from a list. When you download the database file provided, it will contain the current records, so you can change, add, or update the user information and import into the system again. Please note, if you have custom profile fields set up on your site, those can be included when doing site user imports or exports to your site. But only custom profile fields set to show on form in profile fields under user management will be included in those reports. Once you downloaded the Excel user import template by clicking the download Excel template button, the Excel file must be formatted properly. The template contains comments explaining what each column need to contain. Few important things to note here: that the username or the email address or both must be supplied. Either one can be left blank, but they cannot both be blank. The username cannot be an email address. The approved by column must either be blank or it must match the name of a group that already exists for the site. Use group 1 through group 5 columns to assign the user to one or more groups in the site. Group names you enter in the column sales must match the name of a group that already exists for this site. Do not use an asterisk as part of the name you enter. One or more group columns can be filled in and the remaining columns can be blank. If all group cells for a user are blank, the user will not be assigned to any group. The location column must be either blank or it must match the location code of a location that already exists for the site. The department column must be either blank or it must match the name of a department that already exists for the site. The country must be the two-letter abbreviation for the country. Typing out the full country name will import the address, but the system will not correctly recognize the address. The time zone must be set up correctly for the user. You can download a starter file for an account that already has users added by clicking Export Now. Those users will be included in the file so you can remove or edit them. Passwords cannot be included in the file export. Leave the password fields blank if you do not want to change the passwords. For any new records, a password is required. Once complete, upload your completed Excel file. Then click Import Now. You will need to refresh your site user page for the new users to appear in the site user list. Now please note that choosing to replace existing items will delete all current users and replace them with your imported file. If you also have the option to send email notification selected, all users will be sent a new user approved email. If you only want to send emails to those being added for the first time, do not use the replace option. To edit the user information, click on the pencil icon beside their name. You can also import address books for users. Some user accounts will not have any addresses. This would be true for an informational site or for a B2B site that is in location mode only, or one that is set to both address book and locations, but the user has not yet added any personal addresses to their account. While you can set a user to inactive and later reactivate him or her by selecting the Include Inactive Users from the Filters tab and saving the open record again. To edit or add to a user's address book, we have two options. Firstly, manually edit or add an address. To edit or add address detail to their account, click the pencil icon, select the Address Book tab at the top of the page. A list of addresses that are assigned to this user account will display. You can click on the pencil icon beside each of those addresses to edit the information or delete the record altogether. You can click the Add New button to add a new address to the user's address book. Secondly, import address books. To import address books, you will first need to download the user address books import template similar to the site user import by clicking the Download Excel template button. You will then fill in the template and upload it back into the Upload Excel file area and click Import Now. Similarly, you can export the user's address books, edit them, and re-import them to edit existing address books. In order for a user to be able to log in into the site and order, they must belong to a group. When your account is created, the Everyone group will be added as a default. This may be the only group you ever need. In cases where you want different users to have a different experience in the site, setting up additional groups is the way to achieve that flexibility. Adding the user to a group or groups they need to belong to is done in the third tab, that is Site Group Membership. A list of the groups created in the site will display. Simply check the box or boxes that apply to this user. Some of the reasons you may want multiple groups could be some users have more permissions allowed in the site, or an approval workflow is active in the site and you need approval managers specified, or could be pricing is different for different groups of people, or something like some products are hidden or shown to only specific users or groups of users. The new user defaults is used so that when a customer creates their own account, Presero knows what settings to give them by default. With MailChimp integration, this integration will allow you to push users in any of your Presero storefronts into any of the mailing lists you have created in MailChimp. The user information can be easily added to MailChimp. Thank you for watching this video tutorial.